Of Florida, and I think all of you on this committee will be very happy to know Finley is in cybersecurity. There's a third who is traveling abroad. I wish she could be here. My amazing father-in-law, David, my sister, Beth, my brother-in-law is home with my niece, my nephews, if you could just raise your hand, Evan, Jake, and soon-to-be niece Savannah, my brother Brad, a brilliant lawyer, my sister-in-law Tandy, and my nephews Justin, who just got a 4.0 at UVA, Rex, great college tennis player, Brad, great tennis player, is Rhea here? And my niece, my beautiful niece Rhea, and the little guy is in school because he's 10. My friends, Leslie, Kathy, Dina, Tiffany, Kim, Paula, and so many of my former co-workers. And Ranking Member Durbin, if you want to get dirt on me, these women have known me since I was a child. Seriously, most of them. So thank you for indulging me in that. They've all made a very long trip to be here. And thank you for holding my hearing as well and not postponing it. I appreciate that. Thank you all. From the moment I interned at the state attorney's office in Tampa, Florida, all I wanted to do was be a prosecutor. The Supreme Court certified me, and I had 4 jury trials while still in law school. Lost most of them, but had 4 jury trials and never wanted to do anything else. I continued my career there, trying everything from DUIs, domestic violence cases, capital murder cases. The whole gamut. I became a lead trial attorney in courtroom every day trying career criminals, was deputy chief of a division, and then ultimately was felony bureau chief, and eventually left to become Florida's 37th Attorney General for the state of Florida. Nothing has impacted my career more than my experience as a state prosecutor, because I got to know and still keep in touch with many victims and their families from when I was a prosecutor. Upon becoming Attorney General in 2011, I proudly served for 2 terms. I was term limited. I would probably still be there right now had I not been kicked out of office by term limits. I loved being Attorney General. I did my best to keep Florida safe, to continue to stand up for victims of crime, and to fight the opioid crisis and the drug crisis that was not only facing Florida, but this entire country. Out of the top 100, this is one of the things I'm the most proud of, oxycodone dispensers in the entire country, I believe it was 98 of them, 90 or 98 of them, lived in Florida. We fought for tough legislation. Kids were dropping dead every day. We fought for tough legislation. And after that legislation, none of those opioid dealers, doctors, practiced in Florida. We fought to eliminate human trafficking by raising awareness and prevention and talking to parents and talking to children. We also provided critical resources, including safe houses, that my state was lacking. On the civil side, we worked to protect consumers. We tackled everything, including off-label prescription marketing, which affects, as you know, many, many people who can't afford prescriptions as well. We partnered with states' attorneys general from both parties and federal agencies across administrations. We went after price gougers during hurricanes. If confirmed as the next Attorney General of the United States, my overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe and vigorously prosecuting criminals. And that includes getting back to basics: gangs, drugs, terrorists, cartels, our border, and our foreign adversaries. That is what the American people expect, and that is what they deserve from the Department of Justice. If confirmed, I will do everything in my power, and it will be my great responsibility to make America safe again. Making America safe again also requires reducing recidivism. We have to fix the Bureau of Prisons, and I am looking on both sides of the aisle. The Bureau has suffered from years of mismanagement, lack of funding, and low morale. I was proud to support President Trump's First Step Act. I think more can be implemented and more can be done on that front. President Trump's leadership on criminal justice reform has demonstrated what is possible when a president is unafraid to do things that have been deemed to be too difficult. We have to reach across the aisle and get solutions for all of these problems. Like the president, I believe we are on the cusp of a new golden age where the Department of Justice can and will do better if I am confirmed. Lastly, and most importantly, if confirmed, I will fight every day to restore confidence and integrity to the Department of Justice and each of its components. The partisanship, the weaponization will be gone. America will have one tier of justice for all. In all this work, I'll collaborate closely with this committee. I will work with all of you as I have committed to do when I met with almost all of you. And I will partner not only with the federal agencies, but with the state and local officials throughout our great country. I look forward to answering your questions today and working together for this country and our Constitution. Thank you, Senators.
I will ask first questions, and Senator Durbin, and then I'll call on the Democrat people the way that Senator Durbin would say so on their arrival or here by seniority, in the same way that on the House side. And I'll make sure that I don't abuse the 7 minutes. I want you to have your attention on this binder that I put up here. It gets to a key factor of each senator's role in oversight. It contains 144 oversight letters that I sent to the Biden-Harris Justice Department and its component agencies, with many of those letters in there to the FBI. Adding letters to the Inspector General, that would be about 165 letters. So I've sent more letters since you've been in my office before Christmas. Should you be confirmed, 144 letters will be your responsibility. The responses I have received so far fall in two categories. First, they weren't answered at all. Second, I received a response, but it didn't fully respond. Said another way, the Justice Department merely sent me words on a piece of paper. So, should you be confirmed, you'll have an obligation to respond even to the minority and consider a letter from them, even if my signature's not on it, as they want information. Will you commit to responding to my oversight requests as well as the requests of other members of the committee?
Chairman, either I or my top staff will personally review.
Let's go forward right here real quick. Let's get into the meat of this. All right, right in here.
I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes, necessary to be elected president in 2020?
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. You know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no. And I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
Well, the quote that I give you is exact. He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that, and may have been taken out of context.
It was an hour long. And
right.
You can certainly listen to it. I hope you will. Every American should. As a former prosecutor, are you not concerned that the President of the United States called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked him to do.
You need to listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
Are you noticing how she's not actually answering the question, as in yes or no? These people can't answer questions like that. You know why? Because they want to float around the intent of where they're really wanting to go with their answer, and basically they choose between the lesser of the two evils, basically burning the candle on both ends. That's how this goes. And it's been wish-washy that way ever since I've known and paid any attention to the American politics, because they are wish-washy.
You also advise the president on pardons. That's part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6th riot, violent assaults on our police officers, should be pardoned? That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed, and if asked to advise the president.
She's not answering the question. You see how disappointed that the senator is there that's asking the questions? She's not answering the questions.
I will look at each and every file, but let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard Partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month,
Jack.
and for corporate giants,
Jack,
Amazon and Uber, when you were asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest?
Well, Senator, first, that was the amount my firm received. I believe multiple people represented the country of Qatar within my firm. My role, and I am very proud of the work that I did. It was a short time, and I wish it had been longer for Qatar, was anti-human trafficking efforts leading into the World Cup, which is something I'd like to talk about later, too. I was registered as FARA, along with many members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. And the question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
GEO, yes.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has faced criticism for safety violations, inadequate health care, and poor management. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is GEO's largest source of revenue. Under the Trump administration, GEO stands to earn hundreds of millions of dollars by detaining immigrants if there is this mass deportation. Would you sense any conflict of interest if you're asked to judge the performance of this government contractor?
Senator, I will consult with the career ethics officials within the Department of Justice and make the appropriate decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank
You forgot to say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So, listen, President Trump asked a bunch of us, who would you pick for Attorney General? How many of you got to ask that on our side? Probably didn't ask Dick, but asked me. I said Pam Bondi. That's like an easy decision. I couldn't think of anybody more qualified, that he knew, that he trusted. And it's okay to have, you were his lawyer, right?
Yes, sir. I represented him when they tried to impeach him the first time as part of White House Counsel, Office of Special Counsel.
Being Trump's lawyer prepares you for many things. So, yeah, you have a long-standing relationship with the president. He trusts you. That's a good thing. That's probably why President Kennedy picked his brother, Bobby Kennedy. I guess you can say no to your older brother. I'm sure he would. But this idea there's something bad is ridiculous. Who do you pick? You pick people you know. You pick people you trust, people that you're qualified. I'm glad he picked you. He knows you, he trusts you, and you're highly qualified. So the idea that there's something wrong with that is just absolutely ridiculous. So let's talk about the job you're about to have here. Do you support making certain drug cartels in Mexico foreign terrorist organization?
Senator, I personally went to Mexico. I personally dealt with these cartels when I was a state prosecutor, and they are a grave and violent threat to our country. Yes, Senator.
Advising the president. Good. Now, when it comes to Crossfire Hurricane, are those days over if you're Attorney General?
Absolutely.
Okay. Lake and Riley, are you familiar with that case?
Sadly, I am, Senator Graham.
Do you know why the man who killed her was released from custody? He was paroled due to detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. Now, that's not your call. You'll be DOJ. But do you agree with me that the statute regarding parole doesn't allow parole to be based on we don't have detention beds? There's nothing in that statute would authorize parole based on lack of capacity. Are you familiar with that statute?
Yes, sir, and that's frightening.
Yeah, well, it's frightening. Are you going to fix it?
I am going to do everything in my power to fix it if confirmed as Attorney
You're going to
General.
advise President Trump we need more beds. Tom Holman's the guy that's going to do this, but would you as Attorney General say we need more bed space so Lake and Riley never happens again?
Senator, my job, if confirmed as Attorney General, will be to keep America safe.
Do you think we
And that
need more
includes-
detention space?
And that includes having enough space for violent criminals, for people that should not be in this country,
Yeah.
who have committed violent crimes.
To the
and Laken
public.
Riley is one of many.
Yeah, but 41,000 beds in this country to detain people. We got like millions of people here illegally. We let this dude go because we didn't have any place to put him. I hope those days are over. And if, Tom, you're listening out there, I hope you'll create enough detention space to make sure we don't find this dilemma ever again. Do you think we're at war? And if so, who with?
Oh, Senator, we're at war on so many fronts.
Are we at war with ISIS?
Of course, we're at war with ISIS.
They're at war with us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely,
Do
Senator.
you think since our withdrawal from Afghanistan, threats to our homeland have gone up from ISIS?
Yes.
Okay, March 7th, 2024, General Corella. I assess ISIS-K retains the capability and will to attack the U.S. and Western interests abroad in as little as 6 months with little or no warning. That's March of 2024. General McKenzie, ISIS-K has a strong desire to attack the United States after it began to grow in Afghanistan following U.S. exit in August 2021. He also stated the threat to ISIS-K from ISIS-K is growing. Major General Quantock, the U.S. remains target number one for ISIS-K. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't have my security clearance, but from everything I've read and heard, ISIS is one of the greatest threats.
Okay, well, when you get your security clearance, you're going to find out these people are coming after us and they want to kill us. So I would like to have a strategy to deal with the ISIS threat that's beyond just the law enforcement model. Does that make sense to you, that we should use every tool in the toolbox?
Senator, that includes wrapping in our state and local officials too, and better cooperation throughout our country and our world.
I totally agree. Do you support reauthorizing FISA in 2025?
Senator, I believe 702 is up in 2026.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry,
believe it's
26.
2026, and we will closely be looking at that. FISA is a very
Do
important
you agree
tool.
that the 702 provides important intel gathering capability to protect our nation?
Extremely important.
Okay. So, Pam, you're about to step into a job that's one of the most important jobs in any democracy. Let's go back to pardons. If I'm a lawyer for somebody in jail, would you promise to listen to the application and read it before you made a decision?
Yes.
Okay. No matter who you are. Good. That's the way it works. People want to bargain with you up here. Will you do this? Will you do that? All I ask you to do is call it as you see it. Hire good, competent people and give the president the best legal advice you can. Run the Department of Justice in a manner that other people would want to join it one day. Growing up, I had a fondness for the FBI. I watched the show, I think it's every Sunday. Wanted to be an FBI agent. Right now, the FBI needs an image overhaul. So you have a real task ahead of you in two areas. To restore trust to many Americans who have lost trust in the Department of Justice, and to make sure that this country is safe from drug cartels that are killing 3,000 Americans every 2 weeks for money, to go after these people and to protect our homeland that's under siege. I think you're the perfect pick at one of the most dangerous times in American history, and I look forward to supporting you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for meeting with me. I greatly appreciate that.
It was a pleasure. Ms. Bondi, you were a courtroom prosecutor for a great many years. As a courtroom prosecutor, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
And you went on to be Florida's Attorney General. As Florida's Attorney General, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
As Florida's Attorney General, you were responsible for hiring into the Florida Department of Attorney General, correct?
Senator, the Attorney General's office in Florida is the third largest in the state, approximately 1,400 employees and approximately 400 lawyers. Only California and Texas are our bigger offices.
And you were responsible for hiring into that office while you were Attorney General?
Yes.
Would you have hired someone into the Florida Attorney General's office who you knew had an enemies list?
Senator, to cut to the chase, you're clearly talking about Kash Patel. I don't believe he has an enemies list. He made a quote on TV, which I have not heard. I saw your sign, or Senator Durbin's sign, about Kash. But I know that Kash Patel has had 60 jury trials as a public defender, as a prosecutor. He has great experience in the Intel Department, Department of Defense. I have known Kash, and I believe that Kash is the right person at this time for this job. You'll have the ability to question Mr. Patel.
And I'm questioning you right now about whether you will enforce an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The FBI's, what is the FBI's role in national security and counterterrorism, and how important is that role?
You know, Senator, I believe now more than ever, counterterrorism is so important and vital in our country. We are facing such incredible threats here and abroad. I'm sure many of you saw former FBI Director Wray's interview on 60 Minutes. He talked about the threats that, frankly, again, I don't have my security clearance, but the threats facing us, Senator, from China right now that are so great. The sleeper cells within our country.
Given that importance, is it responsible to call for shutting down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work? And will you, as Attorney General, impede or shut down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work?
Senator, I believe that national security is vital right now for our country on so many fronts. I could continue to discuss many others.
And the FBI's role in that?
And the FBI plays a vital role in counterterrorism.
Which you will or will not shut down.
I will look at each agency. I have no intention of shutting anything down right now, Senator. I am not in that office yet. And if confirmed, I will look at each individual agency and how it should be managed. But counterterrorism right now in our world is vital.
You have said that Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted in the Trump administration. What Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted and why?
I said that on TV. I said prosecutors will be prosecuted to finish the quote, if bad. Investigators will be investigated. You know, we all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law. Let me give you a really good example of a bad lawyer within the Justice Department, a guy named Klein-Smith, who altered a FISA warrant, one of the most important things we can do in this country. So will everyone be held to an equal, fair system of justice if I am the next Attorney General? Absolutely. And no one is above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure. And we want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent, that you remain able to and willing to tell the president no when that's necessary to protect the Constitution and the integrity of the department. So that's where I'm asking these questions. We talked in the meeting about the contacts policy that has prevailed really since Senator Hatch sat in that chair and demanded it of the Clinton Justice Department through all the administration since then, with the exception of a brief period under Attorney General Gonzalez, which he corrected and which did not end well for him. There has been a contacts policy that limits contacts between the White House and the Department of Justice to a very few senior officials on each side. In your role as Attorney General, if you are confirmed, will you maintain, defend, and enforce that longstanding contacts policy?
Senator, yes, I will meet with White House counsel and I will meet with the appropriate officials and follow the contacts policy.
My time has expired. Thank you, Ms. Bondi.
Senator Cornyn.
Ms. Bondi, your testimony is music to my ears.
Thank you.
One of the things that I have been most concerned about over certainly the last 4 years and extending back during President Trump's administration is the weaponization and politicalization of the Department of Justice, which together with the FBI is one of the most important institutions in this country. If people don't trust that their elected officials will faithfully enforce the law or administer equal justice under the law, they've lost faith in America. And that disturbs me greatly. And
I disagree with that statement. It's not that we've lost faith in America. We love America. We are advocates for America. We believe in the things that our ancestors fought and died for regarding America. It's the system. It's the takeover of various government officials that are now basically making a mockery out of our country that we are ashamed of. We're not ashamed of our country. We are ashamed of various individuals that has made this country into a laughing stock. And hopefully Donald J. Trump will try to straighten all this out, providing that it's possible. But as we get further and further into this, I am noticing instead of going forward in reality, we're still, actuality, going backwards. Because during the time that these people are doing what they're doing right now towards bringing all this to the surface, this could be a time that they could be involved in other affairs for the public that would be probably 1,000 times more crucialer than what they're doing right now. I'm not saying that what they're doing right now is not crucial, but whenever you take up airspace, air quality time, and you're doing this just basically to showboat, or because you have a disagreement within the system itself, this is just wasting our time and theirs too as well. If the woman has been elected, she needs to go on about her business and being that in which what Donald J. Trump and his cabinet members desires for her to be. If not, they need to take her off the list. That's the way I feel about it. But to sit here and haggle and ask questions, you know good well she's not going to come up with a straight answer whenever you try to corner her, because she's one of these smart politicians. She's basically speaks out of both sides of her mouth at the same time, like any other politician.
I know what does you.
This is just a big smokescreen in trying to clear up something pertaining to a broken system that, as far as I'm concerned, the various people that are still in charge still has not given a full account for, regarding how come our system has been railroaded the way that it has, and how come the majority of the American people feel like that they have been bamboozled or hoodwinked by our own people. How come? Well, it's got to do with the works of the dark forces. It's got to do with evil. And it's got to do with greed. And it's got to do with people that only care about their own agendas rather than the American people's agendas.
I know it does you too, based on what you said. So I'm delighted to hear you say what you have said. But I want to talk about some specific topics. Time is short. First, the border. I believe President Biden and Vice President Harris had presided over one of the biggest humanitarian and public safety disasters in American history. Senator Cruz and I represent a state with 1,200 miles of common border with America. But as you pointed out with fentanyl, what happens at the border doesn't stay at the border. Fentanyl poisoning is the most common cause of death of young people between the age of 18 and 45. We know where it comes from. The precursors come from China. They go to the cartels. They mix them up, make them look like innocuous pills. And young people take them and die. It's just that simple and that tragic. So there's just so much that we could talk about with regard to the border, but you know, I know people voted for President Trump in large part because of his promise to restore security at the border. Will you do everything within your power as Attorney General to enforce the laws on the book, including the President's executive orders, which I anticipate he will be signing on January the 20th when he is sworn in, and help do everything you can and the Department of Justice can is to restore security to our southern border?
Yes, Senator, absolutely.
One example is, of course, if you come here to the from anywhere in the country and you show up at the border under the Biden and Harris administration policies, you'll simply be released into the interior of the country, either to await a trial date, which may never occur due to the enormous backlog, or you will simply be paroled. And I know parole has a special connotation in the criminal law, but in this context, as you know, it's designed to be administered on a case-by-case basis. Yet President Biden and Vice President Harris had granted parole, that is, released people into the United States on a categorical basis, or anybody who shows up, or because they don't have the detention facilities to keep them. So do you believe Laken Riley would be alive today if President Biden and Vice President Harris had enforced the law and secured the border?
Senator, he should not have been in our country. And then Laken Riley would have been alive. And I don't think it's just Laken Riley. There are so many victims throughout our country. Not only that, we're all familiar with the violent gangs who are coming into our country, walking into our country freely through the open border. The cartels, the gangs, Venezuela's let people out of their prisons. It's been reported. I don't have the security clearance yet to see what's happening, but I know, we all know, there are criminals throughout our country, and it is my commitment to you on both sides of the aisle that I will do everything in my power with the agencies that fall under me, if I am confirmed, to make America safe again. We have to do that, Senator.
Well, many of us, of course, see classified information on the Intelligence Committee or just generally in our duties as a senator. And so you're not going to feel any better about the blinking lights, the danger that Director Wray has talked about. In my closing moments here, I want to revisit an issue that is of particular importance. 60% of the president's daily brief, which is the intelligence brief that the Director of National Intelligence and the CIA Director delivered to the President, comes from Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I call this the most important law that most people have never heard of. I know you have, and you're familiar with it, but I want to ask you a few questions about that. It's been called the crown jewel of U.S. intelligence. And of course, it cannot be legally used to spy on American citizens. And if it is, it ought to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I know you would agree with that. But there have been some, as you know, and as you pointed out to Senator Graham, we have a temporary extension of the existing authorization for the use of the intelligence community to target foreign threats to our national security that expires in 2026. And I'd like you just to confirm here on the record that you will enforce that law and you can support the law as it is written.
Senator, I haven't read the entire 702 in front of you, but I will commit to reading that and doing everything I can to keep America safe again.
Of course you will. So, Director Ratliff, who's going to be, I'm going to go to his hearing on for CIA director. Of course, he was confirmed as Director of National Intelligence. Some have argued that in order to query or look at lawfully collected FISA 702 product, that you need to get a warrant requirement in order to show probable cause that a crime, including espionage, perhaps has been committed. But Director Ratliff has written that a warrant requirement may not achieve its intended objectives and could hinder national security efforts. Do you share Director Ratliff's concerns?
I would read his memo, and I will speak to you after I read his memo, Senator.
Well, we need to have I hope you and I can continue this conversation after this, because I think there's a lot of misinformation with regard to how Section 702 works. I'm happen to be one of the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
We're going to go forward right here. Boy, they sure do like to brag on themselves, don't they?
Right.
Senator, it will be my job, if confirmed as Attorney General, to make those decisions.
Let's go on here. She's done repeated that now 7-8 times off different questions with different people. Keep going. Let's listen to this guy.
And the Constitution of the United States of America, the people of America would be my client. And it is also my job to advise the president. My client are the people of America.
A simple question of constitutional interpretation. Is President-elect Trump eligible to run for another term as president in 2028?
No, Senator, not unless they change the Constitution.
Thank you. One of the concerns I've
finally
raised with
come up
you
with
is
a no answer.
safeguarding the Department of Justice's independence in the face of some promises on the campaign trail by then-candidate Trump that he would use the department to target his political adversaries, or that he might interfere with prosecution. What would you do if your career DOJ prosecutors came to you with a case to prosecute, grounded in the facts and law, but the White House directs you to drop the case?
Senator, if I thought that would happen, I would not be sitting here today. That will not happen. Will not happen. Every case will be prosecuted based on the facts and the law that is applied in good faith. Period. Politics have got to be taken out of this system.
I
This
agree with
department
you.
has been weaponized for years and years and years,
But let
and
me,
it has
if
to
I might,
stop.
thank you. Let me, if I might, Madam Attorney General, refer you back to Senator Durbin's opening comments about previous attorneys general, our former colleague Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr. I don't think it's credible to say that it may never happen that the president-elect would direct an unethical or illegal act. I think both of those attorneys general found themselves crosswise with the then president by doing things he didn't welcome or approve of. Just answer the question for me, if you would. I know you may not expect it. I know you wouldn't have accepted this nomination if you thought it possible. But let's imagine that once again, President-elect Trump issues a directive or order to you or to the FBI director that is outside the boundaries of ethics or law, what will you do?
Senator, I will never speak on a hypothetical, especially one saying that the president would do something illegal. What I can tell you is my duty, if confirmed as the Attorney General, will be to the Constitution and the United States of America. And the most important oath, part of that oath that I will take, are the last 4 words, so help me God.
Given the importance of that oath, I hope you can understand the importance of repeated questions from some of us about the importance of having independence in the Department of Justice. It has a long tradition of independent special prosecutors, especially to handle high-profile or often political cases. If you got credible evidence of a criminal violation by a White House official, including even the president, would you bring in a special prosecutor?
Senator, that's a hypothetical. I can tell you what I do know is special prosecutors have been abused in the past on both sides. We have seen that for many, many years. They have cost the taxpayers countless dollars, countless. And I will look at each situation on a case-by-case basis and consult the appropriate career ethics officials within the department to make that decision.
Attorney General, do you think special counsels need to be confirmed by the Senate?
I will follow the law and I will consult with the appropriate ethics officials regarding the law. Right now, they do not need to be Senate confirmed, of course.
But you did sign an 11th Circuit brief arguing that they should be.
I will follow the law, Senator. That's why I said that.
Understood, but I was just getting to the clarity about the difference between a position you've advocated and what the current law is. Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Wray has done an outstanding job as FBI director at avoiding political pressure. And although he was chosen by President Trump, he's being driven out so that he can be replaced. My perception, I've not yet met with Mr. Patel, by a loyalist who has publicly said he will do what the president asks him. Given that Attorney General Barr was asked to go find evidence of election interference and improprieties, went and looked for the evidence and said, I can't find any, and was then dismissed, I'm just going to ask you one last time. Can you clarify for me that in following ethics and the law, you'd be willing to resign if ordered to do something improper?
Senator, I wouldn't work at a law firm. I wouldn't be a prosecutor. I wouldn't be Attorney General. If anyone asked me to do something improper and I felt I had to carry that out, of course I would not do that. That's one of the main things you learn when you're a young prosecutor is to do the right thing. And I believe that has continued with me throughout my very long career.
As we discussed, protecting American invention and innovation, American intellectual property, is a real concern of mine and of several others on this committee. I look forward to talking with you about that pressing concern. But the most important question I had for you today is whether you will be willing and able to stand up to politicization and interference in the Department of Justice. And I look forward to further clarification from you about the specifics of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Senator Cruz would be next, but he's not here, so I call on Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh
Ms.
God,
Bondi,
let's go
welcome.
on. I can't stand that guy. Matter of fact, about 85% of them I can't stand, because I know that they know that we know how corrupt that they truly are. It's all a big smokescreen. Let's keep going. Keep going. Oh, that's the end of it. Get on over, Jack. Lay down. Lay back down, Jack. Lay back down, Jack Smack. Let's see what this is. This got something to do with Saudi Arabia or something. Stop right there.
Has been one of the
the barriers to that, frankly. Aid in medicine, in food, fuel, water. Then they're going to be talking about who rebuilds
Israel.
Gaza, and that
Israel and
awaits
Hamas.
some form of Palestinian governance, and we know that the Palestinian Authority has been incredibly weak and elderly and not permitting younger, vigorous, very well, educated Palestinians who are ready to take over. There's a diaspora of Palestinians in the West Bank and elsewhere, ready and eager, but there has been a problem of leadership there as well that is not yet resolved. Dennis, go ahead.
I was just going to say, look, in addition to everything you were saying, which is exactly right there, the Palestinian Authority has to reform if they're going to be able to gradually go back into Gaza and replace what would be an interim administration.
Knock down something.
One of the key things that's also going to be provided in this humanitarian assistance are caravans, so that you can begin to house people who have lost housing. I think something we're talking about a significant number of caravans going in quickly, in addition to more tents. So that will deal with the inability just to have living space right now in Gaza. I think the critical element of rebuilding Gaza depends upon having a mechanism on the ground that guarantees two things. One, there can't be smuggling, so Hamas can't rebuild itself. And two, that there is a kind of monitoring mechanism for all of the materials that are coming in. Those materials that are coming in can't be diverted. So there has to be a kind of monitoring mechanism for that as well.
Yeah, that's been one of the complaints, a legitimate complaint from the Israelis, that not only is there looting by desperate people trying to feed their children, but more urgently by Hamas fighters and others. And Hamas
Here you go. You need this.
leaders there
You need this, Jack.
grab the stuff for UN deliveries or other deliveries before it
You
can
have this
actually
stuff
get to
right here.
people who
Here.
need it.
Yes, they then sell it. Then they sell it. So that's how they've actually been looking to sustain themselves financially. So here again, I mean, this is partly, look, the Israelis haven't done as much as they could have done, but the international community has also not stepped up and said, okay, we will help ensure that there's secure delivery. Now, with the ceasefire, you'll put people on the ground who actually can do that. That's an important part of being able to ensure there isn't a vacuum of power and Hamas can't reconstitute itself.
And one of the major issues has been what the Saudis, what the Qataris, what the UAE is going to do. The Saudis and the U.S. and Israel were very close to an agreement back before this October 7th invasion. A month before that, I was in New York at the UN meetings. You were probably as well, and talking to all sides. And they were talking about coming up with a normalization agreement for Israel, which they were going to put into before the Senate as soon as February. This was a Biden administration commitment to the Saudis and to Israel.
I continue to say, and I was right about that being some sort of a Saudi symbol with the two swords. I thought I was, but then again, you got so many symbols over there regarding so many different ethnic groups and etc. over there. The reason why things has blowed up the way that they have, the fault falls upon to the politicians here in America and the preachers pertaining to the people in general that went at this in the wrong avenue whenever Ronald Reagan finally accomplished what he accomplished in convincing the superpowers that the world was not going to end by mankind, but it was going to end the way that God intended for it to end. But since all that has occurred in 1988, in the ending part of Ronald Reagan's administration, we can see now, 40 years later, basically, because it was in 1983 whenever I made a telephone call about the Antichrist to the White House, that my life has been in shambles ever since then. But we can see now the manifestations of humanity in what that they have done, or sometimes in what that they didn't do that they should have done in response towards the major OPEC oil industries that has basically put not just the Americans but the world in behind the eight ball in regards to seeing all these extreme weather patterns that have now inundated the planet. Inundated the planet. This is the reason why things has turned out the way that they have over in Jerusalem pertaining to Hamas. And this is also the reason why the things has turned out the way that they have regarding President Putin telling the world that they feel like that they've been cheated, which in reality they have, because there never was a movement to back the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. So as we get further into this, okay, I'm going to continue to make these videos in telling my side of the story. And I'm going to continue to tell people in how that it was deliberately, consciously, intentionally done in groups of people pertaining to the adults, pertaining to the baby boomers, pertaining to the so-called Christians that wanted to put this on the back burner in using delay tactics. And because of their delay tactics, now we're seeing where infrastructures all over the world is basically falling apart. And it don't matter if it's in Africa with their continent separating. It doesn't matter if it's pertaining to all ice melting. It doesn't matter if it's regarding not seeing stability in our country or in the world anymore. It's all hand in hand with one another. So in essence, it's as much of what the American politicians and the preachers didn't do that they should have done that has put us where we are right now in all this chaos, especially since all the fires has erupted out in California, especially since all the damages pertaining to seeing extreme weather patterns. I think they go back about in 2017 is whenever they took notice of the extremes that was happening out west pertaining to the droughts. We're just seeing erratical disturbances in the norms no longer being the norm towards going over to the abnorm. Now I know that there's a cold front coming down again from Canada, and I thank God every day that we're having any type of winter whatsoever, because I truly am convinced that eventually the way that we're going in drill, baby, drill, baby, drill, 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 eventually the world is going to cease to exist as we know it in major earthquakes and volcano activity blowing up and the extreme weather changes that is in essence of what the Bible teaches and talks about, that God will come back and destroy those who are destroying the planet because of them once more trying to cheat God, not necessarily the Windmill Ministries missions, not even myself pertaining to Dennis James Jackson, but in essence towards trying to cheat God out of that in which what happened. And they talked out of both sides of their mouth. They talked about peace in 1988, whenever them 9 tapes wound up going to the White House pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy. They talked about peace. But the other part of their mouths was ravaging on war. And we see that pertaining to what went on with Desert Storm and Desert Shield. We see that in what went on pertaining to other events. We see that in what's went on pertaining to our own judicial justice system towards it being favorable in protecting people that knowing good and well that they're guilty and they shouldn't be protected. They should be under the same criteria as the guilty. We see the injustices that has happened now again and again for the past 30 plus years. And I continue to keep saying that, and I'm going to continue to keep saying that. Now, it may make a bunch of people uneasy. It may make them mad. They may want to shake their heads and say, "Well, he's after it again." Well, he's still digging up old skeletons. Well, you can call it digging up old skeletons if you want to, but the fact of the matter is, whenever you do something wrong in America, they don't forget that. Your life gets documented on a piece of paper. They call it a what? A criminal file. And that's exactly what they was trying to do to the founder of the Windmill Ministries. They was trying to criminalize Dennis Jackson because they did not want Dennis Jackson's message, even though it was ordained by God. They did not want that message to go forth and to be predominant in the limelight. And because of it, it has brought misery and sorrow and agony and distress on every levels imaginable. And like I said, I'm going to continue to keep saying, I just hope to God that somebody like Donald J. Trump can get this turned around, because if not, we will be doomed as a society. I promise you that. We will be doomed, and the Bible will fulfill itself, and God will come back and destroy those who are destroying the planet in some form or fashion, or he will allow for Satan to do it, because I think in a lot of cases, God basically pulls his reins of protection off of certain situations and certain people and certain groups and certain countries to the degree that he basically says, sick 'em. Sick 'em, Lucifer. Sick 'em, Antichrist. Do your job. You brought distress, you brought anguish, you brought misery to the kingdom of God. Now you're bringing it to humanity. But for the preachers to blame this on God only indicates to me that they're beating the horse on the wrong end. Number one, it's not that God wanted to do any of this. Number two, they're still avoiding their accountability and responsibility in their predecessors and what that they have done before them, or even some of them are still living to this day that are still guilty of this situation that now we're all facing off into. I mean, I just got through speaking to a good friend of mine by the name of Daniel Stewart in east of Robinsonville, North Carolina, up towards Snowbird. He's been preaching in a church for 31 years. He was born there. He's originally from that area. And according to his report, as of today, what is this, January the 14th? Something like that, 15th. Anyways, according to his report, they're saying that they might get I-40 back open again by mid to late March if the weather cooperates, and that because of that main juncture being closed down on one side, it has absolutely caused chaos that you don't hear nothing about the news about, either local news or international news. And they're still finding dead bodies. They still don't have an accurate number pertaining to the death toll of either Tennessee or North Carolina. And we agreed that what the media does, they'll focus in on a horrible situation for a day or two, a week or two, and then whenever something else happens, they'll basically rotate out of that event and go to the next event that basically covers the limelight during that time. I truly believe, because of the rich people, because of it being the mass event that happened out in California, I truly believe that will not be just a week or two lived regarding how many people's lives that's been affected out in California. Now, if that would have been in, let's say, lower part of Mississippi, that affected that many lives, or even the lower part of Louisiana, or maybe up in another part of the country somewhere else, you'd probably be more prone of hearing it for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then once something else occurs, all the cameras get moved out of that particular event and start focusing on another event. They keep rotating again and again and again, the media. And it's as if whenever they get through putting things on the front burner, I'm going to go back to the North Carolina and Tennessee deal. It's as if people just forget about it. And the thing about it is, those people's lives are still suffering out there. They're still living in tents. If it wasn't for the Samaritan Purse from the Billy Graham, Franklin Graham Association, if it wasn't for other nonprofits, you would probably already had a bunch of people up in the hills of Tennessee and North Carolina that had already frozen to death. Because whenever something like that occurs, it literally puts people's lives in shock. And there's a lot of them right now that are wondering, why did they live and their brothers and their sisters or their mothers and their fathers or their cousins and their friends have now all died? They're in a state of shock. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. And because of that, these people rather die. It don't matter in what type of death that they'd rather die in. Kind of like what they was talking about a while ago pertaining to the fentanyl problem, pertaining to the children that's growing up, because these children feel as if the decisions that's been made here in America has basically brought their future to an end, to the degree that now out of, let's say, 1,000, there won't be but 10 or 12 that will be successful in life towards actually becoming predominant and considered a high-class, mid-class success story. That's how they look at it. The majority of them has been spoiled because of the adults, because of the baby boomers. They've been given everything in the world. And to think that they're going to take second seat to something and basically get out here and start digging with a shovel or start welding or start putting in pipe or being this or being that or working in a factory 8 hours a day or whatever, standing on concrete, out of that 1,000 people, you're going to have probably about 70% of those that are going to be hesitant in going that way, but they're going to realize eventually that that's the only way that they can go in, because if not, their life is going to be in disarray. So what's going to happen to the other 18%, 16 to 18%? What's going to happen to them? They're going to basically be bums. They're going to basically be a thorn in the side of our society, to the degree that they will be more of a liability more than they'll be an asset. Now, I have tried to explain myself very, very thoroughly in these affairs. Because of my lack of education, I'm sure that I've misworded some things. Because I don't have the paperwork right here in front of me, I'm sure that I probably missed some dates accidentally. Didn't exactly pinpoint it exactly like I should have had. But none of those occurrences took place intentionally. Number one. Number two, I'm not Einstein. I don't, I got a pretty good memory at the age of 63, soon to be 64, but even that's beginning to wear on me. Because why? Because now age is wearing on me. Why is this? Well, it's because of the delay tactics that the so-called church world and the adults and the baby boomers have played, that has now put all of us in behind the 8 ball. And until we recognize this and we're willing to act upon this, odds are we're going to see more and more crazy stuff like we're seeing right here pertaining to attacks on Israel or whatever. We're going to see more grief, more distress, more sorrow, more horror, plain out and out raw horror that's going to happen to either the American people or people all over the world. Now, I'm just calling it like I see it. This didn't cost you nothing, but I'm telling you right now, there's accountability that's going to begin in Northwest Tennessee and Kenton, Tennessee, going all the way back to 1983, that various people, even to this day, have still not come clean in.
To make sure that at any given moment
has still not come clean in, and odds are they're thinking to themselves, because nobody is appointing them in a court of law towards actually suing them or taking them before a judge, including some of the judges, including a great deal of the law enforcement in this area, they're thinking that they've gotten away with it. I've got news for them. If the state of Tennessee, once you've made a boo-boo, ain't willing to pardon that boo-boo, especially after you have served whatever time that you needed to serve pertaining to your crime, if the state of Tennessee ain't willing to do that, do you really think that God is going to be willing to act unappropriately according to their customs? I don't know. I can't answer that question because I'm not God. I can't answer that question, and I'm glad that it's above my payroll. It's above my pay scale, because that's something that I can't answer about other people and what that they have done or what that they didn't do that they should have done for the past 30 plus years. The only thing that I can do at this point in time is pray. Just like a while ago, I got a good friend that was under the knife between 8:30 and around 10 o'clock. The Holy Spirit fell upon me towards pray for this individual. He's up in Lourdes Hospital right now in Paducah being operated on, pertaining to an aneurysm. And I just got through speaking to his fiancée or his girlfriend, whatever, significant other, and she said that he come out of the surgery room just about the time whenever the Holy Spirit moved upon me, which was about 10 after 10. So those prayers have been fulfilled. Me and this significant other, this individual I'm talking about, we bonded in prayer that God protected him through the surgery, and now we're agreeing that he'll come out of the anesthesia and that he will heal up according to God's holy will. Because the Bible says that whatever that we shall bind here upon earth, it shall be bound in heaven. This is what we believe. This is what we've asked for, and this is what will take place. In the meantime, going back to the issues at hand, they can try to botch it up. They can try to camouflage it. They can try to whitewash it. They can try to smoke screen it any way that they want to. But the bottom line is this. The reason why the Windmill Ministries missions was not successful in seeing a spiritual revival anointed by God the Father through the Son Jesus Christ into the elevation of seeing a revolution is because certain people in America didn't want that to happen. They didn't want that to occur. So in these delay tactics, it has brought now all these other newer problems into existences that now we're realizing, just like basically, I think it was in total, they're saying at least 12,000 structures. That account may change. You figure 3 per family. You're looking at a great deal of people that's homeless right now because of that. And me and Mr. Stewart, Brother Stewart in North Carolina, discussed this very thoroughly a while ago on the telephone in saying, well, it's as if that they've just given up and forgotten about these people out here in Tennessee and North Carolina pertaining to the problems that they're going through. As a matter of fact, he went so far as saying that he didn't even know that FEMA was still up there. Now, Brother Stewart is still sending people up that way to do humanitarian work for those people. And I have seen through Facebook, I don't have no reason not to believe it whenever I've seen it from my own eyes, that there's a bunch of people, either Mennonites or Amish up there, that's building one-room huts for these people, knowing good and well that they are so grief-stricken that there's no way in hell that they're going to walk away and leave that area indefinitely, because that is their home. That is where that they reside in, and they rather die, even during a freeze, than they would to walk away. And I can relate to that because that's where their love, that's where their interest, that's where their heart is. I can relate to that. In the meantime, we're dealing with the situation now like what happened in January, the New Year's Eve night, New Orleans. 14 or 15 people got killed. I don't know how many of them got run over. That I don't know, maybe damaged indefinitely for life. Had another bomb blow up over there in Las Vegas the same night or the same morning in front of one of Donald Trump's towers. And we have seen the year 2025, which is supposed to be the year of the Jubilee, according to the Catholic Pope. We have seen it basically explode in areas that has reached the potential of being a phenomenon. Whenever you see that many people's lives that are being affected negatively again and again, and that's just the stuff that we know about, okay? If you're really hooked into the internet real well, and you're hooked up to all the other major news agencies all over the world pertaining to the 7 continents, there ain't no telling what all that's went on since New Year's Day, according to our calendar here in America. And still going on, just like this event right here, which is a very, very sad event. And I pray to God that somebody, somehow or another, that they'll release the hostages and that we will see some sort of an agreement in response to all this. But I truly don't believe that it's going to be an indefinite, true solution to the problem until people in America decides that they're going to do the proper and right thing regarding biblical Bible prophecies. Until then, it's just going to linger. It's going to fester. Until then, there's going to be that many more people that's going to sift through the cracks. It's going to be that many more people that's going to be harmed and hurt and taken advantage of and basically be ruined. Now, that's what certain people in Northwest Tennessee is going to stand in front of the Heavenly Father, including judges, including law enforcement agencies, including mayors, including deputies. They're going to stand in front of the Heavenly Father, and He's going to ask them, why did you allow for this to go on as long as it has? And I just hope to God for their sakes that they got a good answer. Because there's going to be some very, very important, serious questions asked. And I hope that they have some very, very important, serious answers with the questions. Because if not, it could very well cost them their very own soul. Now, I don't pray that for nobody, including my worst enemy. I don't pray that nobody's soul winds up going in hell, including the Luciferian Lucifer, Satan in the flesh, over in Saudi Arabia. Because I feel like that there is a chance of partisanship or negotiation or trying to work things out before it actually turns into a bloodbath. I may be wrong about that. You know, all these delayed tactics, it's really made them people grow, and they've become very, very powerful over there pertaining to the Saudi Arabian evil empire. And they've got influences now all over the Middle East. All over the Middle East. Now, they can put on a show all they want to, a smokescreen, towards trying to pretend that they're the good guy. But I think the majority of the people in America know that they're not the good guy. They're actually the villain. They are the monsters. They have been Antichrist all along. They can try to smooth it up. They can try to camouflage it. They can try to backwash it or whitewash it any way that they want to, but the bottom line, evil is still evil. It has always been evil. Good is still good. It has always been good. It will remain good, and it will be good that excels and exceeds over evil pertaining to God's people coming out victoriously.
There are the parties, the country.
Let's go on here and see if there's some sort of agreement here. I may have to back up once I realize that they're in a special news conference. And it looks like I am.
And two, to secure the hostages. Yeah.
Let's back up and let's get part of this, what they're talking about right here. Let's stop right there.
And it's assuming it sticks, it has had a remarkable outcome.
Thank you so much, Peter Baker. And joining us now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez.
Okay, it says right there that Israel and Hamas agree ceasefire deal. And if that be the case, praise the Lord for that.
Gabe, we expect we will be hearing from President Biden, but from everything I've been told, it will not be until after Qatar officially announces it.
Yeah, that's right, Andrea. But look, as you've been discussing, we're already hearing from President-elect Trump in a social media post just within the past few minutes. He's already had two so far. He, in this latest one, he calls this an epic ceasefire agreement, and he essentially takes credit for it, takes credit for his administration, and gives kudos to Steve Witkoff, his incoming Middle East envoy, who, as you've been discussing, has been involved in this process. Now, look, Andrea, as your discussion with Peter points out, there has been a lot of cooperation from the incoming administration and current National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
Now, that's what you call showboating. Beating their chest, saying, look what I've done. I. They're politicizing it, and stuff like this should never be politicized. Just like the events of going on with all these horrors pertaining to these mass weather events, those things should not be politicized. Though we're talking about individuals' lives that have been turned totally upside down and in some cases destroyed. Those things should not be politicized. This isn't over some sort of a game. I'd rather not people see you to be favorable towards putting you back in power or keeping you in the power that you're in. This should be over a government that is not being functionable towards taking care of its people. And whenever it comes to big events like this right here, it's supposed to be for the people. It's not supposed to be for the present administration that's in power right now pertaining to the Democrats.
Jake Sullivan just yesterday, he and Mike Waltz spoke at an event where they discussed the partnership between Steve Witkoff and Brett McGurk from the current administration, speaking about these hostage negotiations. But it appears that President-elect Trump, no real surprise here, he is taking distinct credit for this. He's saying that before he even gets into the White House, this is what we can expect. And this comes, Andrew, of course, after many times in the campaign over the last several weeks, the President-elect saying that all hell would break loose if these hostages were not released.
And maybe because of his stance that he took, maybe President Trump, or soon-to-be President Trump, prior President Trump, whichever way you want to categorize him, maybe he did influence this agreement. And if he did, so be it. But once more, it's not about politicizing on who should get the recognition for this or who shouldn't get the recognition for this. This is about trying to stop something that has been incredibly, incredibly evil, that we have seen millions, not thousands, but millions of people's lives affected negatively on account of. I go back to the original core of origin of the reason why it did not pan out the way that it should have had regarding a major revival elevating into a revolution is because of certain individuals that want to hide, that want to stay unaccountable, that have allowed for this to fester as long as it has without seeing a major movement. Once more, this is about the movement of God. This is not about the movement of Dennis James Jackson. This is not about the movement of the Windmill Ministries missions. This is about a movement from God. And I still would be willing to bet my life on towards whether or not it needs to be all one state or a two state based upon whether or not I win or lose in the doomsday devil's duel pertaining to going to war hand to hand with the evil demonic force over in Saudi Arabia. There's got to be a way to look at this in the lenses of the holy, anointing, eternal God. And whenever you start swaying away from those factors, then you are swaying in the wrong direction, and usually this is the consequences on account of, and that's exactly what I'll tell anybody, what that they have done in the adults and the baby boomers in trying to stop this. They have brought on a travesty to now their children and their children's children, and possibly even their children, depending upon how long that they have lived, that now that they are witnessing on a day-to-day level over here in America.
He took office. Now, Trump, right now, we're here in West Palm Beach. He is, as we understand it, at his golf course. He left Mar-a-Lago a little earlier this morning. We don't yet know, he has not spoken on camera yet, but a person familiar with the process says that the inclusion of the word "we" in his initial post on social media, that we have reached a ceasefire deal, that word "we" was very intentional. And in the view of the transition team, that Steve Witkoff was extreme.
We have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be, that will be realized shortly. Thank you. That's coming directly from prior President Donald Trump, that is soon to be re-elected President Donald Trump. I hope he's right. I really do. I pray to God that there will be a mighty, mighty movement in not just the Middle East pertaining to a Holy Ghost revival, but right here in America, in India and Africa and South America and Indonesia and all these other countries. I pray to God.
Involved in this process. So the president-elect referring to this as peace through strength, and it's certainly something we can expect as this administration unfolds. As he takes office next week, he will continue to take credit for this hostage, this ceasefire deal, even days before he took office. Andrea.
I will say this. I will say this. Out of all the presidencies that I've seen come into play after the 9 tapes went to the White House in 1988, it has been Donald J. Trump that has pushed towards the new Accords, the Abraham Accords, and it has been Donald J. Trump that wanted to move the embassy to its rightful place, and it has been Donald J. Trump that has took on the initiative of biblical Bible prophecy that I haven't seen that strongly in all the other administrations since Reagan's administration. I will say that. So maybe this is the right presidency administration that's going to push this forth, and maybe we will see a grand, great revival that will revolutionize into a revolution. Because if not, we are on a course right now of seeing more and more destruction like we could not even imagine. And California is just another repeat occurrence of that. Good luck to all of us. I want to say God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors towards which way that we go from this moment on. I want to say thank you for listening, and heaven help us all. Shalom.